Hello! Today I'm going to be showing you how to reduce the height of your classic controller and nunchuck sticks to that of a GameCube controller stick. So you can see here, if I use this cardboard piece to measure the height difference, the GameCube stick sits a little bit lower than the nunchuck and the classic controller Pro stick. But what if I told you that didn't have to be the case? With a Dremel tool and some sandpaper, we can make this happen. Now, if you're comparing the difference in height between a nunchuck stick or a classic controller stick and a GameCube stick, you can use a flat surface. However, if you're measuring the difference in height between a classic controller Pro stick and a GameCube stick, you can't, because they actually sit on the stick box at different heights. So that's something to keep in mind. If you have extra stick boxes lying around, then that's a great way to measure. Now, while the classic controller Pro stick is more preferable because it is wider on top, I'm going to be using a nunchuck stick or a classic controller stick for this video because it's what you probably have lying around a bunch of at home. But yeah, so we're going to use the help of this Dremel tool here to cut the top of the cap off, but I'm going to be using this flat looking attachment instead. I don't know what the usual attachments are with Dremel tools, but I'm sure y'all have something like this. The process is fairly simple. You just turn it on and you cut it in half. You're going to want to slowly rotate the stick as you cut it. If you go too fast or you just try to like ram it down the middle, you might actually snap it in half in a way that makes it not easy to work with. So going around the edges until it sort of just falls apart is what you're going to want to be going for. So there's going to be melted plastic going all over the place. You might want to do this in a workshop or in a box or something to sort of localize it. But all these little plastic pieces that are sort of hanging off of it, you can just snap off. And now we're going to go ahead and sand it flat. You can just get some rough sandpaper for this. It doesn't need to be exact. While you're pushing down, you'll want to make sure that you keep an even pressure. If the cut isn't super clean, you'll be able to feel out the bumps and ridges or which way you may have cut tilted so that you can try to sand it down to more of a flat level. You can see we're already getting pretty close here, but it's still tilted to one side a little bit more. I gave it some more sanding, and about this height down, we're able to have a flat and even surface. Want to do the same thing for the top of the cap as well, but you want to be careful not letting it tip as you sand it because you don't want the soft plastic rubber to tilt down and get scraped off. That'll just make it degrade faster. But now we have two relatively flat pieces with a lot of material removed from them. I'm just sort of setting them on top of here to just check the height quickly, and it looks like it's about the same height as a GameCube stick, which is what we want, but otherwise just sand it a little bit more until it's the right height. Now I'm going to be using this Gorilla Super Gel glue as my primary glue of choice. It starts off somewhat tacky, not like super liquidy, so it's easy to get it on everything. I'm going to put some on the base here real quick, and I'm going to put the top on here, but I'm not going to try to like get it to stick just yet. First I'm going to show you how it doesn't fit on perfectly exactly. It's still pretty liquidy, so once you sort of mash the two parts together for a bit and there's enough glue on both sides, you're going to let it sit out for maybe 5-10 minutes so it gets tacky and easier to work with. So it's been a little bit of time now, and whenever I hold these pieces together, they tend to stick a lot more than it was about 10 minutes ago. And from here we can start finagling with the cap until it looks like it's about even. Here it looks like it's sort of tilting downwards a bit, so I'm going to rotate it around until it feels like it's not tilted. You sort of just gotta mess with it until you have it sort of stuck in a straight position. The glue being tacky will also help with this, since it can sort of support the top of this stick box, even if it's not super flush. But it looks like this is pretty straight looking. At least it's good enough for me. So I'm going to call this as a good starting position. Now you can see these gaps in this stick where it's not perfectly flush. I have another super glue, this Loctite regular super glue. This one is a lot more liquidy, so it can flow into the cracks and fill them. And it's sort of like we're adding plastic to the stick box to make it solid again. So I'm just going to give this a quick coating all across the ridge here. And this should give us a nice flush surface to work with later. And you can see there's still this really big gap here in the middle, so I'm just going to spot that with some more glue so it fills in there. And that'll just help with stability in general and making the control stick feel natural as it rotates around the gate. Now you're going to want to let that dry for about 3 hours, and in the meantime we're going to cut up some thin strips of sandpaper. We're going to use the sandpaper to sand down the bumpy and like extra pieces of glue that are sticking out from the edge of the neck of the stick cap that we're working with. It's pretty simple. You just hold the sandpaper next to the neck, use your finger to press down on it, and then you pull from the other side like this. You can scrape the stick box up against it or pull the sandpaper down. It doesn't matter whichever way you do it. But here we are about 3 hours later, and you can see that there's a bunch of glue sticking up off the sides here. It's a little bumpy, doesn't look super great, but that is exactly what this sandpaper is for. So I'm going to start by sandpapering around the whole ridge for about 3 rotations or so, just as like a primer. Just to get the obvious stuff out of the way. And once you finish with your first round, you can sort of check for extra bumpy spots. You can see it's already getting pretty smooth, but we've got this big chunk here of glue. It's near this big gap that we did earlier. Needs to get filed down a little bit more, so putting a little bit more time into sanding it. And after that, looks great. It's much more filed down. And as we compare the heights here, we can see that it's actually just a tiny bit lower than the GameCube stick box. That's fine, but you don't want to go lower than this, otherwise you'll risk scraping up against the gate. And you're done. Let it sit for 24 hours to fully cure, but then after that, you can put it in your controller. And like I was saying, it's almost touching the gate. You really don't want to go lower than this. Aim for as close as the original height as possible, but there's still a little bit of give. It's fine. But yeah, there you go. Hope this helps. Enjoy your new stick.